Hi, and welcome to the Redcast. I'm your host, Eric Lanin. Today we're going to be talking with JJ Thole, the Interactive Marketing Manager at Cambria, and we'll be discussing sales enablement and how they scale their marketing.
Obviously a challenge. I would say another challenge that we have is focus, right? And we live in an ADD world. Where's my phone? I got to check it.
Yeah.
But the focus on, all right, here's the problem we're going to solve right now, and we'll move on to the next thing, right? I think it's very easy to get trapped in wanting to boil the ocean.
Totally.
We have all these problems to solve. What's
Yeah.
our silver bullet?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not realistic. And it gets you frustrated, and it takes a long, long time if you ever get there.
Yep.
So I would say focusing on small wins, small progress, and thinking of progress over perfection. It's a tough one for people to get.
It is because, like you said, boiling the ocean just for perfection's sake isn't necessarily going to be yielding the same results. It's
Right.
And as a personal belief, I believe in the 80-20 rule. It's like if you can get 80% of what you need and save yourself, a lot of complexity to get something implemented or a process in place. Yes, it's not perfect, but it does the majority of the job. And that 20% there is the nice to haves. They're not a need to have to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're focusing on getting work done as a greater whole, you're benefiting the organization, but you're not necessarily winning everyone's hearts and minds over.
Sure.
It's like, oh, it's perfect, it's seamless. It's like, well, you wasted all that effort on something that's not value add in comparison to what the other things that you were working on.
Right. Well, and the value add is I'm going to use it in a different way, right? The speed and I guess expectations that people have nowadays, especially as it relates to technology,
Totally, yeah.
is something that needs to be managed.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation that, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to spend and invest in technology to help us do that. When can we have that done? By next week?
Uh-huh.
And which is I think a great approach to say let's do it fast, right? But that needs to be met with a bit of reality.
Because you can do it fast, you can do it cheap,
Yeah.
or you can do it right. You can only pick a couple of those. If
Right.
you want to do all three, it's going to be long, it's going to be expensive.
Right.
So
Right.
a lot of considerations.
Of course. And so one thing that I actually hear quite a bit from our leaders is let's fail forward fast, right? And that's that's a adage that a lot of people have used, especially in the tech world.
Failing is scary.
It is scary, but if you're doing it because you have got the right intent, and you can do it quickly to learn from your mistakes and pivot, it's a hard concept for people to grasp overall, just because nobody wants to say, oh yeah, we failed on that one, right? I think it's a lot easier for people in the tech world to say, all right, we changed this and it didn't work, we're going to pivot or shift and do that. But what's great about Cambria and what the leadership has set up there is it's okay. It is truly okay if you're failing and you're doing it because you tried something new, but it was for the right reasons, of course.
Totally.
Right.
And you do have the opportunity with, trying to enable, in the context of sales enablement, you don't need to deploy this new idea or tactic or strategy across the whole organization right away. You can, identify a couple champions that want to try it out, and then you can learn from that, iterate, and then deploy once you've, found some traction.
Absolutely. In fact, we're just, we're piloting a bunch of different things with some of our best partners, right? Better ways to share information on consumers. So we want to find better ways to generate information on consumers and share that with our partners. But to do that at a grand scale is daunting. To do it with key select partners that we know can perform when we provide them information makes a ton more sense.
Totally.
It's more digestible not only for the business but for our partners, right? It makes them feel good too to say like, we're going to test this out with you guys.
And
if it works,
they're
great.
recognizing me that I'm producing for Cambria, and they're willing to try something new with me.
Right. They're willing to try and change the way that we are operating to see if we can't make something better. So yeah, failing fast, or at least trying and piloting and testing things quickly, just to get away from the word failure, because nobody likes to do that. But testing things, trying things, being willing to change the way that we operate to for the betterment, ideally, of the business, of revenue.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Is something that Cambria, I think, does a really good job of at least enabling. Right? There's a culture there that helps enable that. And then the other thing that I was going to mention is, challenges is resources. Right? We've got all these people.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to make sure that all these people are aligned and are singing the same tune. But to change that or to influence all those people, the change management behind it. Not only that, but the actual work that needs to get done. We're all crazy busy, and to add more work to our plate doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to help. We're going to do something right or do it well or do it quickly. So finding the appropriate resources, whether they're internal or external, like when we worked with you guys, it's definitely a challenge, but one that I think can be quickly overcome when you kind of take a look at the grand scheme of things. It's all right, where are we actually, and how are we actually going to do this?
Yep, and I think a lot of organizations struggle that we need to do this internally. We need to own everything. And I think in a lot of ways that's very true. I mean, a lot of people have the best intent because it's our brand. We want to protect it. And Redpath went through that same discussion as, do we own our internal marketing? We're a small consulting firm of 30 people, so do we really develop our own marketing team? And for my personal growth with trying to be that marketing expert for our organization, it's been, I don't need to be doing all the content marketing, the development of our website, the social parts of it. And we found that partnering with people that are experts in those fields, it's the same thing as hiring someone for content marketing, a person who's a web developer. But for our organization, we don't need an entire team because we don't produce a lot of content. And my belief is, it's about producing the right content and volumes.
Right.
But that aside, is we partnered with another company that does all of our content marketing, and it's been a huge lift off my plate. I still own the strategy, which the strategy should always remain within the organization.
For sure.
But it can be executed through other partners as long as you're setting the expectations. Kind of what you're going back to is, as long as we're setting the expectations of how the work should be produced and in the context of what it needs to be, what the end result is, it's an efficiency gain.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. And the other aspect of working with a partner is that usually it can be done quicker then. Right? That's their sole focus.
And then you can blame them when they're not doing it right.
Yeah, when the fail fast happens, we failed because they didn't do it right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that happens more often than I'd probably like to admit. Not at Cambria, but I experienced it in many aspects of my career prior.
But you know what to look for, though. And in a way, you become a little bit of that project manager, which isn't always a fun role, but it's I think easier to sculpt a vendor or partner or an internal resource to kind of set those expectations correctly. But then again, it's also, you want to let them be their own creative spirit and let them kind of run with it.
Right. There's a reason that there are agencies and consulting firms in the world.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
They have a level of expertise that is hard to hire and maintain internally. And we've found that when we hire and we work with the right vendors, it doesn't have to be a long drawn out project. It can be a quick hit here and there and continue to build if things are going well. And if not, it affords us the opportunity to say, okay, maybe this wasn't the right direction.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily that our vendor didn't perform. It's not necessarily that we had the wrong strategy. We just found out that maybe this wasn't the right thing. Maybe it wasn't the right time. For example, that augmented reality app I was talking about earlier, we found that it struck a really awesome chord with people because the timing of it was perfect. Apple came out with their augmented reality technology. We were right on board with it.
Perfect.
We had the idea 2.5 years prior.
Oh, wow.
But there was no way to actually execute at scale because you would have to rely on other technologies that weren't inherent to your mobile device.
Yeah, it wasn't native to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So while, we could have invested and probably invested more because the technology wasn't scalable, we'd have to figure out ways to scale it and really train consumers on what this was and what it meant and how to use it. Timing played a huge role in it. And we can say that in hindsight because we obviously didn't execute at the previous few years before Apple came out with that technology, but the timing was right.
That's awesome.
So there's a lot of variables at play there, huh?
Oh, of course. We hope you enjoyed this episode about sales enablement. If you want to find more of our discussions, you can go to YouTube, iTunes, or Stitcher. And as always, please subscribe.